Joining me on India Today right now is Dr. Maher Awawdeh, who is a political analyst based out of Ramallah in West Bank. Many thanks for joining us here on India Today, Dr. Maher. Let's begin with the fact that you're in Ramallah. We know that the situation is quite dire when it comes to West Bank and Gaza and the blockading, the cities under siege. Explain to us what's happening on the ground with the backlash and the severe retaliation from the Israeli forces.
Thank you, and thanks for receiving me on your TV. Situation is really getting worse here in the West Bank. We see the Israelis blocking all the cities, no entrance to any single city. No one is leaving, no one is entering. Palestinians are not allowed to use the different roads connecting different cities. No one is allowed to travel across the only single border crossing leading to Jordan or from Jordan. They opened that crossing maybe for 2 or 3 hours, but then they backed on that decision. 4 Palestinians were killed in Ramallah today morning, and 1 in Hebron and 1 in Jericho. And another one in another city. Total 8 people were killed just in 24 hours by the Israeli forces. Israel is threatening to cut off also electricity, water, internet, everything from the Palestinian territories. We hear much insult, much calls for treating the Palestinians as subhumans, as animals, incitement against the Palestinians for the Israeli settlers. The Israeli settlers also are taking over the roads. They go down to the roads, they break Palestinian vehicles, block Palestinian travel. So situation is really difficult. At this moment, there is a village near Ramallah where the Israeli settlers are trying to torch the Palestinian houses and break the glasses of windows that are on the near the roads leading to Israeli illegal settlements. This much is the situation, and hopefully it doesn't even get worse because of what's going on in Gaza.
Right, Dr. Maher, let's just pull back a little and talk about the attack by Hamas. What's your take on the attack itself and the fact that they not only entered Israeli territories but also are now holding Israeli nationals as also foreign nationals captive?
Let me just clarify things. I mean, I'm not speaking about Hamas as an organization. I'm speaking about the situation as it is. First, it is not an Israeli territory. This is an occupied Palestinian territory, where the Israeli settlements are located and where the Israelis are claiming that this is an Israeli territory, which is not a fact. That's number one. Number two, the Palestinians in Gaza Strip have been under Israeli siege, tight Israeli siege, complete Israeli siege for more than 17 years. If they want to import anything, just imagine powder milk, electricity, water, medicine, anything, they have to get the Israeli consent or approval for that. Before many years, the Israelis also developed a plan called the calorie rationing plan. Like they allowed only enough calories for the Palestinians to sustain their lives, and that's it. So Israel has been detaining all these Palestinians for all of these years. And the Palestinians have been also calling, like the Palestinian president, calling for Israel to abide by and to accept the the Arab Peace Initiative, which was proposed by Saudi Arabia. Yet, and in return for Israel to get its normalization for relations with all Arab countries. The Israelis, what did they do? They started entering the mosque, the Al-Aqsa mosque, on a daily basis and beating the Palestinians and praying there in the mosque. Now the Palestinians in Gaza, they started warning Israel that stop entering the Palestinian mosque, stop taking over our mosque. Yet Israel did not heed by that. The Israelis also brought cows to kill them and burn them in the mosque as a prelude to entering and taking over and building their temple, as they say. So the Palestinians had to respond. I am not justifying violence, but also violence begets violence. Things didn't start on October 7th. The occupation has been going on for 75 years. the time when the British were in Palestine, they were in India. India got its independence, but we are still suffering since that time. It's high time for the Palestinians to get their independence. If anyone wants to speak about peace, fine, go back to the roots. Just simply take away this occupation. Israel has the right, might have the right, as they say, the Americans and the French, the right to self-defense. But certainly enough, Israel does not have the right to defend its occupation. Occupation is illegal.
Dr. Maher, if you could talk about what was the rationale behind this. Now, the action has been taken, the attack has been carried out. Will this not really affect and impact the civilians, not just in West Bank, where you are, but also in Gaza, where there is going to be a major military offensive?
Unfortunately, Israel has been not heeding the calls by the Palestinian leadership, by the Palestinian president for peace. We have been, the Palestinians have been calling on Israel to accept a peace deal, to allow the Palestinians to see the agreements that Israel itself signed, to see these agreements implemented. Israel doesn't want to do that, but they kept pressuring the Palestinians and besieging them to the point where their back was to the wall. No Palestinian now at this moment in Gaza have electricity, water, or medicine. What do you expect of a prisoner who's having that situation? We have, by the way, more than 400 Palestinian bodies detained by Israel. Imagine Israel is detaining dead Palestinians, more than 430 people. I mean, the remains of Palestinians. Israel has more than 500 or more between children and women also detained, beside men. Israel is not allowing for Palestinian prisoners to be released, although during Oslo Accords, Israel allowed or signed and agreed to release them. The Palestinians, and I do not again advocate for violence, but also Israel is not allowing any space for peace. I have seen many international presidents and prime ministers, including the Indian prime minister, visiting the Palestinian territories and calling on the Palestinian leadership to cooperate, and they immediately cooperated. But Israel wouldn't simply go down and to go and sign the agreements and implement them. The last agreement that Israel signed at Aqaba and in Egypt, on the same day, they backed on that agreement and said, okay, we are not going to implement them. At this moment, there are also, we hear about the news about some countries trying to intervene to release the female prisoners and hostages between Israel and Hamas. But so far, I don't expect Israel to go for peace that easily. Israel now is calling for revenge. Since morning, Israel has been simply destroying, and they call it for flattening Gaza. They want everything to be flat in Gaza before they go for peace, unfortunately. This is the mentality of a right-wing government that calls for such violence.
Right. Dr. Maher, then what is it that you expect from the international community? How can the international community really play a role in bringing down the tempers, the temperature, and ensuring that there is peace or return to certain or semblance of normalcy between Israel and Palestine?
I'll speak about first shortly about the negative thing, then to the positive thing. The negative thing is that France, Germany, and the US are not getting it. They are simply expressing full support for the Netanyahu government that is going to war with Palestinians to annihilate and destroy them. This way, America is not understanding things well. If you see their navy getting closer to the borders, to the Palestinian borders and to the Lebanese borders, this reminds me when America was in Lebanon around 30 years ago. What happened then, and what happened with them in Iraq, and even most recently in Ukraine? They did nothing more than exacerbate things. Now, the positive thing is for countries like China, like India, like all those countries who were parts of the non-aligned movements and peace-loving countries to intervene. India is such a strong country that has good relations with the Israelis and with the Palestinians and with the Arabs, who can bring them together in order to implement what most of the world except Israel rejected, and most of the world accepted that, which is the Arab Peace Initiative. The Arab Peace Initiative is a good deal for everyone to meet around peace. And by the way, for something very tactical and most important, Israel, although promised the European Union to allow the Palestinians to hold elections in Jerusalem, they backed on that. So maybe India can simply pressure Israel to sit with the Palestinians, to go for peace and simply implement what it has signed, nothing more. They have signed several agreements. Let Israel implement the agreements that they signed.
Dr. Maher, if you could explain to our viewers the difference between West Bank and Gaza. There is a huge difference when it comes to the political setup and also the structural setup of these two areas. Explain to us how that impacts Ramallah, where you are, and is Ramallah or the Palestinian Authority doing anything in terms of engaging the international community or engaging the Israeli administration to really ensure that, that there is no further escalation?
Well, geographically, first of all, before I speak politically, Gaza is really close. I mean, maybe in less than half an hour, you can travel from West Bank to Gaza. Yet, geographically, it is totally separated by Israel, where you have to pass through different permit regimes, where you need to leave Ramallah with an Israeli permit, then enter Israel with an Israeli permit, then leave Israel with an Israeli permit, then enter Gaza with an Israeli permit, and the same set you needed to return back. So it is this much difficult and complicated by the Israeli occupation. Now, the Palestinians have their own political issues. The Palestinians have that political rift with Hamas controlling the Gaza Strip and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. Now, the Palestinian Authority has been calling for elections to renew all the leadership for the presidential, the legislative, everything. And unfortunately, Israel is not allowing the Palestinians to hold the general elections because the Palestinians say we need the same elections as we held in 1996 to be held in Jerusalem as we did at that time. Israel now, they say, no, we are not allowing you to do this. Why? Because they feel strong enough, emboldened by the American recognition of occupied Jerusalem as their capital, unfortunately. The Palestinian Authority, however, continues to support the Gazan population, paying the bills for electricity, for water, medicine, education, providing them with diplomatic coverage, if you wish, passports, everything. Yet the Palestinian Authority is not in actual control of Gaza Strip because of the internal political division. All the Palestinian factions in Gaza or in the West Bank are calling for elections. So things internally for the Palestinians can be easily resolved once Israel allows the Palestinians to have elections. Now, for the issue of the mosque, simply Israel knows very well that they have tried several times. Once they come too close to the mosque, things will be inflamed, as happened in the Second Intifada and during Al-Aqsa Intifada. People took to the streets and the people are ready to defend the mosque. Israel will not be able to simply implement its sovereignty or control over the mosque, regardless whatever they say. The Palestinians are armed with international legitimacy, regulations, rules, international law. The Palestinians have been living here, and I don't think Israel will simply be able to do anything. Yet, the threat remains there. The humiliation for the Palestinian prayers who go to pray there continues to be there, and Israel is simply using that. Look at their request from America. They requested smart bombs, they requested new technologies, as if the unarmed Palestinians need to be fought with such a huge army. And noting also that when we saw the Palestinians crossing the borders, all of this mighty Israeli army simply collapsed or evaporated. We saw the Palestinians entering the borders and entering military bases without Israeli soldiers shooting a single bullet. Either they simply surrender to the Palestinians, or simply they ran away. We saw the Palestinians torching tanks, taking over tanks, and the Palestinians only had submachine guns. So it is not worthy for this Israeli army, as I see it, to boost as the strongest army and sells technology to the world.
Right, Dr. Maher, humiliation for the Israeli forces aside, I have two more questions for you. Talking about the peace accords between Israel and various other countries in West Asia or the Arab world, was this attack in any way to scuttle the peace accords?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for this. The only thing is that we saw what we saw on the TV. We saw the Israeli army even evacuating Air Force bases, taking their planes loaded on trucks away from the Palestinians. We saw the Israelis recognizing that the Palestinians took away high-ranking officers. This is what we saw. And also we have seen the Palestinians before so many years kidnapping Israeli soldiers and Israel unable to free them without a political deal or a prisoner swap. So at the end of the day, Israel will have to sit with the Palestinians and negotiate with them, which Israel has been rejecting that for so many years. And they don't want to sit with the President Mahmoud Abbas for all these years, although he has been calling for that.
Finally, Dr. Maher, this is a very serious situation, but how do you see it really pan out? Is this going to be a long-drawn conflict and war between Israeli forces and Hamas and Gaza? Or are we looking at some sort of peace? What's your take on how the two sides can really come back to the talking table, negotiating table, or to look at peace and move towards peace?
It depends on many things, international factors mostly. We saw in the past in European countries when some right-wing government won elections, Europe and the world pressured that country to go for another election. Israel has been going for 5 elections so far and electing a right-wing government, which will not allow for peace to happen. Unless something changes in Israel, I don't think soon we will be seeing peace, unfortunately. This is, as you mentioned, this is a long conflict, and I don't see peace in the near future. Yet, if simply the United States, the EU, or the emerging superpowers like China, India, and others pressure, maybe we can see the situation calming down until we have peace. But for the near future, unfortunately, I don't have good news for us.
On that note, many thanks for joining us here on India Today.